Hello, this is William Hemphill with the Faith and Family Matters podcast. I think I'm going to call this segment a marriage segment. What I'd like to do is probably put devotions out on Mondays and then every other week put together a marriage segment, something that might encourage us in our marriage or in our families. So today's segment on marriage is entitled How Curiosity Can Improve Your Relationship. How curiosity can improve your relationship. As a marital therapist, many couples come to my office due to issues like communication. I would say that's the number one issue, communication. But then it's communication about issues like unequal responsibilities, communications about parenting, conflict amongst couples, can't get along with my in-laws, or some issue. You name it, they've come into my office for it. One of the things that's so interesting, especially in that first session or two when I'm working with a couple, I often hear this statement. If my spouse stops doing blank, then everything will be all right. If my spouse stops doing blank, and you can fill in the blank there, then everything will be all right. Or I hear another variation of it. We're only here because he or she keeps doing this. If they would stop doing this, whatever this is, then our marriage would be fine. Here's a third statement. And I'll be honest, I've been guilty of this one myself. I already know what he or she is going to do or say. Why should I respond? It's not worth it. I already know what you're going to do. I would submit to us today that those responses come out of our judgment of our spouse. Now, it's natural, of course, to have some judgment, but that posture of judgment often grows stronger with familiarity and with increased offense. I have a term for it I use in my office. I call it history hijack. In other words, sometimes it's hard to get some work done because the history is ringing so loud inside of us. Well, the last 10 times we tried to do something, he did this or she did that. That's history hijack. And a posture of judgment will often hijack therapy. Why is that? It is because it places the responsibility and the power of repairing a relationship on your spouse only. Notice what I said there. A posture of judgment will often hijack therapy because it places the responsibility and the power of repairing relationship on your spouse only. And here's another part of it. It can be a way of avoiding our own personal responsibility and our own personal awareness and keep us from potentially growing in our relationship. Because a huge part of relationship therapy comes when we look at ourselves, when we learn and examine our own emotional triggers, our background, our ways of behavior. We examine ourselves to learn how we respond in relationship. In other words, there's a big part of relationship therapy that has to do with our own personal awareness and personal responsibility. Here's another thing that's so important, and that's definitely a part of successful relationship therapy. When we come to therapy with a posture of curiosity instead of a posture of judgment. Just like we have our family history, we have our emotional triggers, we have our own reactions, our spouse has those also. And many times when we come in with a posture of curiosity and we learn about ourselves and our spouse, we can start to say, that's why he does this when this happens. Or that's what she heard when I said this. When we come with a posture of curiosity, it allows us to lower the temperature and allows us to learn from our spouses and learn from one another on how to get along better. As a matter of fact, I've seen this in my own relationship. When the temperature is lowered and I approach my spouse with curiosity, I get to learn a lot about how to relate to her better. I always encourage people, whether your marriage is good or whether it's trouble, to take some time to approach and go to couples therapy or marital therapy or relationship therapy. Because in relationship therapy, you and your spouse's personal and marital history is explored. You learn about your own personal triggers or buttons, and your spouse learns about theirs. You also learn about your conflict or reactive or spin cycle. That's important because when you recognize that you're in your conflict or your reactive cycle, it's important to step away from that. Gain understanding about what's going on inside of you so you can come back a more emotionally safe person. And when you come back more emotionally safe, that curiosity about yourself that you can express to your spouse and your spouse can hear clearly can bring about healing. I remember an example not too long ago in my own relationship. My wife was upset about something. I think I'd been away from home working quite a bit. And we started to have a conversation, but first, it was a little amped up at first. We slowed down and we pulled it back. And when we pulled it back, I took a posture of reflective listening and active listening. In other words, my spouse would say something to me about what she was feeling, and I would move my emotions back enough to say, hey, what I hear you saying is this. Did I get that right? You're saying this right now and you're feeling that. Am I following you? The amazing thing about me doing that was it brought the temperature down because my spouse felt heard and understood. Here's the other thing about it. It was a lot easier to feel heard and understood because I took a posture of curiosity about what she had to say instead of a posture of judgment. So my encouragement for us today as a couple, as couples in marriage, take a posture of curiosity. This is William Hemphill with the Faith and Family Matters podcast, thanking you for joining us today. God bless you.